You know what's interesting? We live in a world that tells men, if you're single, you're missing something. Like a man's worth is measured by the hand he's holding instead of the life he's building. But here's the truth no one talks about. Being without a girlfriend isn't a curse, it's a mirror. A man without a girlfriend is not incomplete. He is exposed. He has no place to hide his emptiness, no one to distract him from the questions he's been avoiding. Who am I really? What do I want? Am I chasing love because I'm ready to share myself, or because I'm afraid to face myself? People are afraid of silence. They're terrified of being alone with themselves, and yet that silence is the only place where real answers live. From childhood, we're taught that to be valuable is to be chosen, to be validated, to be loved by someone else. Men, in particular, are fed a subtle script: find a woman, win her over, keep her close, or else you're not a man. So they race to fill the empty spaces with anyone who will say yes, with anyone who will make them feel temporarily significant. But being single is not a curse, it's a classroom, so it's where you learn who you are when no one is watching, when there's no one to perform for, no one to rescue you from your own reflection. A man without a girlfriend is not incomplete, he is unmasked. There is no one to distract him from the truth of his life, no hand to hold while he avoids the deeper questions. What am I building? What do I stand for? What kind of life am I crafting when there is no applause, no validation, no soft place to fall at night? Most men don't realize that their urgency for love is rarely about love itself. It's about escape. Escape from boredom, from insecurity, from an identity that feels unfinished. They believe a woman's affection will make them whole, but love doesn't work like that. Relationships aren't meant to complete you. They're meant to reveal you. If you're insecure, love won't fix it, it will magnify it. If you're angry, a partner won't calm you. They'll expose the anger that's already there. If you're whole, love will simply reflect that wholeness back to you. And yet, so many men run into relationships like someone running into a burning building, thinking it will give them warmth, not realizing it often gives them smoke. When you are alone, truly alone, you are faced with the honest inventory of your soul. You can't pretend anymore. You can't hide behind constant texting or romantic attention. That's when you start noticing who you really are, your strengths, your fears, your patterns. It's when you discover what you actually want rather than what you're told to want. And in that discovery, a man learns emotional literacy. He learns that his worth doesn't come from whether someone chooses to love him, but from whether he chooses to love himself enough to build a meaningful life. The paradox of love is this: when you stop needing it to define you, that's when you become ready for it. When you learn to sit alone and feel at peace, when your days are full of purpose, passion, and clarity, you stop chasing relationships out of desperation. You stop begging for attention, and instead you start attracting the kind of people who are drawn to your strength, not your weakness. You learn that solitude is not emptiness. It's preparation. It's a forge where you burn away everything false so that when love does arrive, it's not a rescue mission. It's a partnership between two whole people. But this lesson doesn't just apply to men without girlfriends. It applies to anyone who has ever lost themselves in love. Too many people treat relationships as an antidote to their own loneliness, a solution to their own lack of identity. They enter love hoping to be completed, not realizing that healthy love doesn't complete you, it complements you. There's a difference between bonding and blending. Bonding means two distinct people join hands without losing who they are. Blending is when two people dissolve into each other, erasing boundaries, dreams, and individuality, thinking that becoming one means becoming the same. But true love isn't sameness. True love is interdependence without codependence. To love without losing yourself is an art form, and it begins long before you meet someone. If you don't know who you are when you're alone, you'll give yourself away the moment you fall for someone. If you don't have standards, you'll confuse attachment for affection and approval for intimacy. If you don't have a clear vision for your own life, you'll be tempted to live someone else's dream just to stay loved. The person who sacrifices everything for love often ends up with nothing, not because love is cruel, but because love cannot thrive where there is no self. When you erase your identity to keep a relationship, you're left with resentment, not romance. Healthy relationships are built by people who already have a center. When you're grounded, you can open your heart without losing your spine. You can be generous without being exploited, loving without being manipulated. And this is why being single is such a gift. It gives you time to build that center. You learn to nourish your passions, to invest in your health, to create friendships that aren't transactional, to make peace with your own reflection. You begin to understand your own emotional triggers, your attachment style, your non-negotiables. You begin to see love not as a savior, but as a mirror. And that mirror is far kinder when you already like the person you see alone. Every man who is racing to find a girlfriend needs to stop and ask himself, what am I really searching for? Is it love, or is it validation? Is it connection, or is it distraction? Because if it's distraction, then no relationship will ever feel like enough. You will always need someone to fill the silence, someone to keep you from facing yourself. But if you use this season to master solitude, to build purpose, to grow into someone you respect, then when love shows up, it won't derail you. It will join you. You'll be with someone not because you need them to make you whole, but because you choose to share your wholeness with them. And that choice is the foundation of every lasting relationship. When you enter a relationship as a whole person, you stop expecting someone else to be your therapist, your healer, or your source of happiness. You can enjoy love without clinging to it. You can fight without fearing abandonment. You can compromise without losing your integrity. And you can walk away if necessary without feeling like your world just ended, because your world was never built on someone else in the first place. Love should feel like an expansion of your life, not an escape from it. If you're constantly terrified of being alone, you'll settle for anyone who temporarily quiets that fear. But if you embrace solitude as a sacred space, you'll never have to settle again. You'll stop trying to earn love by shrinking yourself or becoming what someone else wants. You'll know that your presence is enough because you've spent enough time with yourself to see your own value. The season of being single is where you develop this quiet power. It's where you learn to regulate your emotions without demanding someone else do it for you. It's where you develop clarity about what kind of love you're willing to receive. And it's where you practice living a life that's so rich, so meaningful, that no relationship could ever define it, only enhance it. People forget that love is supposed to be a partnership between two worlds, not a desperate attempt to merge into one. If your life feels empty, you'll use someone else to fill it. If your life feels full, you'll invite someone else to explore it with you. The difference is profound. One leads to control, jealousy, and anxiety. The other leads to respect, freedom, and trust. A man who learns this while he is single becomes unshakable when he is in love. He doesn't fear losing someone because he knows he will never lose himself. And when you don't fear losing someone, you can finally love them in the purest way, without clinging, without manipulation, without conditions. You love them not because you need them, but because you choose them every day from a place of strength rather than scarcity. This is why a man without a girlfriend has an advantage. He has a chance to do the deep work before someone else is involved. He can heal childhood wounds, understand why he loves the way he loves, study his own patterns, and rewrite the story of what love is supposed to look like. He can learn to speak his truth, to set boundaries, to practice being emotionally present without depending on someone to validate him. And when he eventually meets someone worth loving, he will not smother them with neediness or try to control them out of fear. He will meet them as an equal. Loving without losing yourself is not about being distant or detached. It's about having a core that's so strong you can open fully without breaking. It's about recognizing that love is not meant to fix you, but to grow with you. When you know this, you no longer compromise your dreams to keep someone close. You no longer tolerate disrespect out of fear of being alone. and you no longer confuse intensity for intimacy. You choose love not to fill a void, but to celebrate a life already worth living. And that is the kind of love that lasts, not because you cling to it, but because you are free to let it breathe. People spend so much energy chasing love, running after people, trying to convince someone to stay, to notice, to care. They think relationships are won like prizes, that affection is earned by working harder, texting faster, showing up more often, proving over and over again that they're worthy. But the truth is, love isn't a chase, it's a reflection. When you're constantly running after someone, what you're really doing is running away from yourself. You're trying to fill a void with another person, believing that if they approve of you, if they choose you, then you'll finally feel complete. But approval is not intimacy, and being wanted is not the same as being truly loved. Magnetism in love begins long before anyone walks into your life. It starts with the relationship you have with yourself. If you don't value who you are, you'll try to buy love with effort and overgiving. You'll think that if you just do more, give more, please more, someone will finally stay. But real connection doesn't grow in the soil of desperation. When you are rooted in your own worth, love comes naturally. People are drawn to those who radiate peace, purpose, and authenticity. You don't have to beg for attention when you are living a life that already shines. You don't have to chase when your presence already speaks louder than your words. There's a psychology behind attraction, and it has nothing to do with tricks, tactics, or games. It has everything to do with self-respect. When you respect your own time, others do too. When you hold your own boundaries, others rise to meet them. When you have standards that are clear, you don't waste energy convincing someone to treat you well. You simply walk away from anyone who doesn't. And here's the paradox. The more willing you are to walk away from what's not for you, the more magnetic you become to people who actually value you. They sense that you're not needy, that you're not desperate, that you're whole on your own, and that energy is irresistible. So many people misunderstand what it means to be attractive. They think it's about physical appearance or clever lines or relentless pursuit. But true attraction comes from alignment. When you're aligned with who you are and what you want, you naturally repel people who don't belong in your life, and you naturally draw in those who do. You don't have to force it. You don't have to beg anyone to stay. You don't have to audition for love. You simply become a person who is so alive, so grounded, so full of purpose that the right kind of people want to be near you without you saying a word. This doesn't mean you sit back passively and wait for love to fall from the sky. It means you stop chasing relationships that cost you your self-respect. It means you invest in your own growth, your own vision, your own peace of mind, so that when someone arrives, they're joining a life that's already meaningful. When you live like this, you stop attracting relationships that drain you. You stop confusing attention with affection. You stop mistaking chaos for passion. And most importantly, you stop losing yourself every time you fall in love. But what if you've already been in those relationships? What if you've loved and lost, been betrayed, been abandoned, been disappointed again and again? What if your heart has been broken more times than you care to admit? That's where the second truth comes in. Failed relationships are not punishments, they're lessons. They're mirrors showing you who you are, what you need to heal, what you will no longer tolerate, and who you are becoming. A breakup feels like the end of the world because it rips the mask off. It shows you what you've been avoiding. It forces you to face parts of yourself that are easy to ignore when someone's arms are around you. When love ends, we feel rejected, unworthy, humiliated, but the pain is a teacher. It's telling you where you abandoned yourself long before anyone else did. Did you stay silent when you should have spoken up? Did you accept less than you deserved just to keep the peace? Did you confuse someone's potential with their reality, hoping they'd become who you wanted them to be? These are not failures of love. They are opportunities to grow. Every relationship you've had, good or bad, has been a mirror. The loving ones showed you what's possible. The painful ones showed you where you need boundaries. The disappointing ones revealed the parts of you that are still searching for validation, still trying to earn love instead of receiving it freely. And the most heartbreaking ones. They revealed your resilience. They showed you that you can survive being left, being misunderstood, being unseen, and still rise stronger. The problem is that most people don't learn the lesson. They jump from one relationship to the next without ever asking the deeper questions. What pattern am I repeating? What wound am I trying to fix with this person? Why do I keep attracting partners who treat me the same way? If you don't pause long enough to reflect, you'll keep running in circles, meeting the same soul in different bodies until you finally understand what life is trying to teach you. The mirror never lies. If you feel unworthy, you'll attract people who confirm that belief. If you feel desperate, you'll attract people who take advantage of that desperation. If you feel whole, you'll attract people who respect your wholeness. This is why healing matters. This is why solitude matters. You have to become the kind of person who no longer tolerates disrespect, not because you yell louder or fight harder, but because you're simply not available for it anymore. Failed relationships are not the end. They're the refining fire. They burn away illusions about what love is supposed to be. They show you that intensity is not intimacy, that chemistry is not commitment, that love is not supposed to feel like a battlefield every day. They teach you to listen to your gut, to trust your intuition, to walk away when something feels wrong instead of clinging to hope that it will change. They teach you to stop trying to save people who don't want to be saved, to stop giving chances to people who have shown you exactly who they are. When you stop seeing heartbreak as a punishment and start seeing it as a revelation, everything changes. You stop being afraid of being alone. You stop lowering your standards just to feel chosen. You stop chasing love like it's oxygen because you finally realize you already have breath in your lungs, purpose in your soul, and strength in your heart. Love becomes something you share, not something you beg for. And here's the beauty of it all. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you start attracting. When you carry yourself like someone who is already enough, you no longer move from scarcity, you move from abundance. You no longer enter relationships to be completed. You enter them to be complemented. You no longer fear losing someone because you've already found yourself. And that energy is magnetic. People can feel it. They're drawn to it not because you're playing games or acting aloof, but because wholeness is rare and irresistible. Imagine a life where you're not constantly worried about who's texting you back, who's pulling away, who's staying or leaving. Imagine a love that feels calm instead of chaotic, secure instead of suffocating. That kind of love doesn't come from chasing. It comes from becoming. Becoming someone who respects themselves enough to walk away from anything that doesn't honor their heart. Becoming someone who heals their wounds instead of projecting them onto others. Becoming someone who is so full of purpose, passion, and clarity that love is not the destination, but the companion on the journey. When you master this, failed relationships no longer break you. They build you. They're no longer scars you hide, but stories you carry with pride because they shaped you into someone wiser, stronger, and far more capable of loving deeply without losing yourself. Every heartbreak is a teacher. Every disappointment is a doorway. Every betrayal is an invitation to choose yourself again. And every time you do, you become more magnetic, more grounded, more prepared to give and receive love that's real. There are lessons every man should learn long before he falls in love, but no one ever teaches them. They're not in school, not in textbooks, not in the advice your friends give you. This is the unseen curriculum, the silent training ground you didn't even know you were supposed to pass through. Most men are sent into relationships like soldiers without armor. They're told to find someone, win her over, make her happy, and everything will fall into place. But love isn't a trophy you win. It's not a finish line. It's a mirror, and it reflects everything you bring into it. The healed parts and the wounded ones, the strengths you're proud of and the insecurities you've been hiding for years. Before loving a woman, a man must learn who he is without one. He must learn that his value doesn't come from being chosen, but from choosing himself first. He must learn to sit with his own silence without needing someone to distract him from it. He must understand his own emotions, not because vulnerability is trendy, but because ignorance is dangerous. A man who doesn't know what he feels will hurt everyone around him without meaning to. A man who doesn't understand his triggers will always blame the woman he loves for wounds she didn't create. The unseen curriculum begins with emotional literacy. It's learning to name what you feel: anger, shame, jealousy, fear, without burying it or throwing it at someone else. It's understanding that strength isn't about how much you can suppress, but how much you can face. Too many men grow up thinking they have to be stoic to be strong. They learn to lock everything inside until it turns into bitterness or violence or quiet despair. But true strength isn't silence. True strength is self-awareness. It's knowing when you're overwhelmed and knowing how to calm yourself without making someone else responsible for it. A man must learn purpose before he learns passion. If your entire sense of meaning comes from a relationship, you will cling to it, twist it, and smother it until it can't breathe. Love isn't supposed to be your only mission. It's supposed to join your mission. When you know why you wake up in the morning, when your days are already full of life, you don't look for a woman to rescue you from boredom. You look for someone to share your overflowing world with. That's attractive not because it's a strategy, but because it's authentic. A man with direction doesn't need a relationship to feel alive. And that's exactly why his love feels so alive when he gives it. The unseen curriculum also includes learning boundaries, not as walls, but as frameworks for respect. If you don't know how to say no, you'll resent every yes. If you don't know what your standards are, you'll bend to anyone's desires just to keep the peace. And when you do, you won't love her. You'll perform for her, and performance always collapses. A man who has never practiced setting boundaries will lose himself inside a relationship. He will confuse sacrifice with love, and in trying to make her happy, he'll erase who he is. But love doesn't require erasure. It requires two clear identities meeting without fear. Which brings us to the second truth, the wholeness code. The greatest love stories are not written by people who complete each other, but by people who complement each other. This idea that you need someone to finish you is romantic on the surface and toxic underneath. If you enter love incomplete, you'll put the burden of your missing pieces on her shoulders. You'll expect her to fix what only you can heal. You'll mistake control for safety, dependence for devotion, and neediness for love. And no relationship can survive that weight. Two complete people create unbreakable love because they're not trying to fill a hole in each other. They're not saying, "I'm empty, save me." They're saying, "I'm full, share this with me." They bring strength to the table, not desperation. They bring purpose, not panic. They don't fear losing each other because they've already found themselves. And when you don't fear losing someone, you can finally love them without clinging, without manipulating, without bending the truth just to keep them close. A man who has done the inner work doesn't look for a woman to mother him, to manage his moods, to carry his insecurities like they're her responsibility. He owns his feelings. He owns his story. He becomes the kind of partner who doesn't need constant reassurance to feel valuable. He doesn't need to control her to feel safe. He doesn't collapse every time there's conflict. He can stand in his own life fully, and that steadiness is what allows love to flourish. Too many relationships fail because they're built on need, not choice. When you're incomplete, you choose someone because you're afraid to be alone. When you're whole, you choose someone because you genuinely desire to share your life with them. That's the wholeness code. Love is richest when it's free. When you're not holding someone hostage emotionally, when you're not terrified of losing them, when you're not measuring your worth by how close they stay, that's when love becomes deep and fearless. The unseen curriculum also teaches a man to master his energy, not in some mystical sense, but in a real, practical way. How do you show up in a room? Do you radiate peace or do you carry chaos? Do you attract partners who mirror your unresolved issues or do you draw people who respect your clarity and calm? The truth is, love doesn't magically fix who you are. It amplifies who you are. If you're insecure, a relationship will highlight it. If you're whole, it will highlight that too. This is why the work must be done first, before love arrives, not after. Men who understand this stop playing games. They stop trying to manipulate attraction with fake confidence or forced charm. They stop chasing relationships like they're prizes to win. Instead, they build themselves into men worth loving, not because they want to impress someone, but because that's who they choose to be. When a man takes responsibility for his own growth, his own healing, his own direction, he becomes magnetic in the most natural way. He doesn't need to beg for attention. He doesn't need to perform. His presence speaks for him. This is the kind of man who can create unbreakable love, not because he's perfect, but because he's honest. He knows where he's strong, he knows where he's weak, and he's not afraid to face either. He doesn't hide behind bravado or mask his pain with arrogance. He learns to communicate not by shouting louder, but by listening better. He learns that intimacy isn't built through control, but through trust. He learns that a real partnership isn't about merging into one person, but about standing side by side as two distinct individuals who choose each other freely every single day. When two whole people meet, love feels different. It's not frantic. It's not anxious. It doesn't feel like walking on eggshells, wondering what you need to do to keep them from leaving. It feels secure, calm, expansive. It feels like home, not like a battlefield. And yet, this kind of love is rare because wholeness is rare. Most people never take the time to learn the unseen curriculum. They jump into love half-built, hoping the relationship will finish the construction. But no partner can finish the work you refuse to do. They can only shine a light on what you still need to face. This is why solitude is so important. This is why the seasons of being single matter. They're not empty spaces to rush through. They're training grounds. They're where you learn discipline, purpose, emotional maturity. They're where you confront your own shadow instead of making someone else deal with it. They're where you learn to love yourself in such a deep, unwavering way that you no longer look for someone to complete you. And when you meet someone who has done the same work, love becomes effortless, not because it has no challenges, but because both people have the tools to face those challenges together without losing themselves in the process. A man who has mastered the unseen curriculum doesn't ask a woman to fix him. He doesn't expect her to sacrifice her own identity to make him feel like a man. He doesn't need constant validation to feel strong. Instead, he shows up as a partner, not a project. He brings clarity, stability, and respect into the relationship. And that kind of man is rare, but he is also unforgettable. Because when you meet someone who is whole, who is deeply rooted in who they are, you can feel it. You feel safer with them. You feel seen by them. You feel like you can breathe. The wholeness code isn't about being perfect before you fall in love. It's about being responsible. It's about taking ownership of your own life so that when love comes, it's a choice, not a crutch. It's about building a life so meaningful that love is the complement, not the foundation. Because if love is the only foundation, it crumbles under the weight of your unmet needs. But when love rests on the solid ground of two people who know who they are, it becomes strong, resilient, and unshakable. Most people think love is about holding on, but real love is about letting go. It's about allowing someone to be fully themselves without feeling the need to put them in a cage. Too often, relationships fail not because love disappears, but because ownership takes its place. Somewhere along the way, people start to confuse devotion with possession. They believe that if they care about someone, they have a right to control them. They believe that if they give their heart, they must be owed complete compliance. But that's not love. That's fear wearing a romantic mask. Love without ownership is love without chains. It's loving someone's soul, not their obedience. It's recognizing that they are not an extension of you, but a universe of their own. When you truly love someone, you don't shrink them down to fit your comfort zone. You give them space to grow, even if their growth challenges you. You cheer when they rise higher, even if it makes you feel insecure for a moment. You celebrate their freedom because their freedom is part of what makes them who they are. Many men enter relationships with a silent, unspoken contract in their minds. If I give you my love, you must revolve around me. They expect her to move only within the orbit they allow. If she shines too bright, they dim her. If she dreams too big, they try to shrink her ambitions. They call it protecting her or keeping her safe. But often it's just fear of losing control. And when love turns into control, the relationship stops being a partnership and starts becoming a prison. A man who truly understands love without ownership knows that commitment doesn't require chains. It requires choice, ongoing, daily choice. If someone stays with you, it shouldn't be because they're trapped, guilted, or manipulated. It should be because they want to be there. Love is only meaningful when it's free. A locked door may keep someone inside, but it also keeps them from choosing to walk back in every day. Love thrives not under surveillance, but under trust. This doesn't mean you become passive, letting someone walk all over you or treat you without respect. Love without ownership isn't weakness. It's strength. It's confidence. It's knowing your value so deeply that you don't have to grasp, beg, or cage someone to keep them. You understand that their life is theirs and your life is yours, and the bond you share is precious precisely because it is chosen freely, not forced. When a woman feels trusted, respected, and unchained, her love grows deeper. She feels safe to pour into the relationship because she's not losing herself inside it. This brings us to the second truth, the masculine anchor. In a world where everyone is rushing, competing, and struggling to prove themselves, love becomes the harbor where you rest. A man's role in a relationship isn't to dominate or control. It's to anchor, to provide a kind of presence so steady that the storms of life don't shake the foundation. But anchoring doesn't mean becoming rigid or losing yourself to make her feel safe. It means holding your own center so firmly that she feels she can lean on you without fear of you collapsing. A man who is an anchor is emotionally grounded. He doesn't react to every little thing with anger or panic. He doesn't crumble when things get hard. He has mastered his emotions, not by suppressing them, but by understanding them. When you're with a man like this, you feel calm because his presence radiates assurance. He doesn't need to prove he's strong by shouting louder, showing off, or controlling everything around him. His strength is quiet, consistent, and unshakable. But being an anchor doesn't mean you become her therapist or her savior. It doesn't mean you neglect yourself to hold her up. Too many men think that being strong for someone else means they have to carry everything alone, never asking for help, never admitting when they're tired. But an anchor isn't useful if it's rusted and broken. You can't provide stability to someone else if you're crumbling on the inside. The masculine anchor is about being whole and steady, not about being perfect or superhuman. When a man learns to be this kind of anchor, he stops looking for control because he already has control over himself. He doesn't try to micromanage her life because he's not afraid of losing her. He knows that if love is real, it doesn't require force. And if love isn't real, no amount of force will keep it alive. This kind of man isn't threatened by a woman's independence or her success. He doesn't see her freedom as competition. He sees it as beauty. He supports her dreams not because it benefits him, but because he genuinely wants her to thrive. Being a masculine anchor also means leading by example. You don't have to lecture or demand respect. You simply embody it. You take responsibility for your own actions. You keep your word. You stay calm in chaos. You listen more than you speak, but when you do speak, your words carry weight because they come from clarity, not insecurity. A woman feels safe with a man like this because she knows he won't betray himself. And if he won't betray himself, he won't betray her either. Love without ownership and the masculine anchor go hand in hand. When you anchor yourself, you stop trying to anchor someone else by chaining them. You stop trying to control who they talk to, where they go, or how they express themselves. You realize that control is an illusion anyway. People can only stay if they want to. So instead of policing their freedom, you focus on being the kind of man worth staying with. You focus on being solid, honest, trustworthy, and confident. And when you become that, you naturally attract loyalty without ever having to demand it. Men who live this way radiate an energy that says, I don't need to own you to love you. And that kind of love is rare and powerful. It's the kind of love that makes a woman feel like she's blooming, not shrinking. It's the kind of love that makes her more herself, not less. Because at the core, real love isn't about changing someone to fit your expectations. It's about inspiring them to become the best version of themselves because they feel so safe, so supported, so seen in your presence. To love without ownership is to risk. It means you have to trust that love is stronger than fear, that freedom is stronger than control. It means you have to let go of the illusion that you can force someone to stay. And to be a masculine anchor is to face your own fears instead of projecting them onto her. It's to say, I am solid no matter what happens. I am whole with or without this relationship. I choose you freely, and I hope you choose me freely too. When you combine these two truths, relationships transform. They go from suffocating to liberating. They go from fragile to unbreakable, not because nothing bad ever happens, but because the love is built on trust, respect, and mutual wholeness instead of control and neediness. This is love at its highest level, free, steady, and deeply alive. At the end of the day, every man has to decide what kind of love he wants to build. Do you want a love that survives only when you control it, police it, and fear its loss? Or do you want a love that grows wild and beautiful because it's rooted in freedom and trust? The truth is, you can't own a person. Not really. You can hold them physically, you can pressure them emotionally, you can build a cage and call it protection. But the human soul was never designed to be locked up. And even if you manage to keep someone close by force, you'll never have their heart. What stays under chains stays resentful. What stays by choice stays loyal. This is why becoming a steady man matters more than any strategy, any line, or any show of charm. Women don't need a man who shouts, flexes, or controls. They need a man who is anchored in himself, a man who can weather storms without falling apart, who can face life's chaos without making her the enemy. When you carry yourself like this, you're not just her partner, you're her safe place. And when a woman feels safe with you, she will give you a depth of love that control could never buy. But being that man doesn't mean giving up your soul to save hers. It doesn't mean losing yourself just to be strong for her. A hollow man can't hold anyone up for long. Your strength has to come from wholeness, from knowing who you are, from building a life so full of purpose that love becomes a choice, not a crutch. You cannot anchor someone else if you're drifting aimlessly yourself. So work on yourself, not as a tactic to impress, but as a commitment to your own growth. Become the man who doesn't have to grab, cage, or beg to keep love. Become the man who naturally draws loyalty because his presence feels like peace. Become the man who knows that if love is real, it will stay, and if it's not, no amount of control will save it. When you love without ownership, you're saying, I choose you because I want you, not because I need you to complete me. When you stand as a masculine anchor, you're saying, you can lean on me because I know how to stand on my own. Together, these truths create a relationship where both people breathe freely, grow fully, and love fearlessly. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. Love was never meant to be a prison. It was meant to be a place of freedom, a bond between two whole people who choose each other every single day, not out of fear, not out of desperation, but out of deep, unwavering desire. When you become that kind of man, you don't just find love, you inspire it. You don't just keep it, you elevate it. You don't just receive it, you multiply it. That's not just love. That's love at its highest level.